I will at this point welcome, we have got three amazing panelists today who are here representing probably the three best institutions and offices to talk about this, and we are very, very thankful to all of them. I will invite them to join us here up on the stage. We'll start with Erica Campbell from the Office of U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. So Erica is here. She is in charge of agriculture, rural development, transportation, among many, many other things. But we have been very, very fortunate to have Erica's office very involved with the Vermont industrial hemp community and staying on top of all this. And then also from the Agency of Agriculture, Farms and Markets, Mr. Cary Giguere, who is here representing the state. Again, a hemp farmer as well. I think everybody in here has got a good amount of familiarity with hemp. I want to make sure to point out Mr. Bob Escher. If you guys aren't familiar, Bob and his son Alex are leading experts nationally in hempcrete as well. So for those of you who haven't met Bob and Alex yet, really encourage you to ask some questions if you're curious at all hempcrete. And then from the University of Vermont, Agricultural Extension, Heather Darby, who is here doing actual research in the field. These guys have done research at the Border View Farm, up in Auburn for several years now, and that research is publicly available, so I encourage you guys to check that out. But like I said, guys, we'll do this relatively informal. I want to really make this interactive for you guys. I sent them some questions. I'll set up kind of with a stool here, and we can kind of have just a little guided discussion for about half hour, 45 minutes. And again, really appreciate you guys being here, and especially our panelists. So thank you very much to our panelists. Give you guys a round of applause for coming out on a Sunday and not taking for granted that we get to do this here in Vermont and have our Congressional office here on a Sunday talking to us and have all of you guys. And everybody who's going to watch this afterwards, probably more people than we have in the room today, several thousand more, are going to be very excited to see what we have to say. So really appreciate it. Let's get started with you, Erica. Maybe we can kind of set the scene here as far as talking about the Farm Bill. This is one of the later farm bills as far as not being passed yet, but it seems that it's close. Can you kind of set the scene with where we're at with the Farm Bill? And I'll just put the website up here in the background. If you guys want me to pull up anything, I can. But maybe you can just kind of set the scene where we're at and what the timeline is, and then we can kind of get into talking with Cary and Heather about what's sort of in it that's going to impact us here.
Okay, yeah, so Farm Bill 2018 timeline is ticking down. The Farm Bill expired on September 30th of this year, and so we had an election in November, and there was some discrepancy around whether they were going to try to pass what's called a lame duck farm bill, which would be in this session right now, or wait until the new Congress comes in and obviously the House flips. So I think some people were thinking, oh, that would be actually maybe a good thing. Certainly from a hemp point of view, I think people are very anxious for the Farm Bill to pass, because the Hemp Farming Act that passed the Senate, it made it into the Senate version of the Farm Bill. It sounds like that will make it into this final version. So the way it is the House has their version, the Senate has their version. The Senate's version was pretty status quo for a farm bill, but it did include this Hemp Farming Act as a real positive note. The House version was not very good, in our opinion, had a lot of really bad things in it, and it also did not have hemp included in it. It's been going into conference, and it's been pretty behind closed doors. We haven't seen, there's little things that have leaked out, but really it's very much the leadership of those conference committees that have been working on this. So all indications are that the Senate version of that's the Hemp Farming Act that McConnell put into the Farm Bill is going to be in it. So I think that's a positive thing, and it wasn't wasn't perfect. There was probably a few things in there that maybe could have been better, but it's certainly a very, I think, a positive thing. And timeline, they extended the session until December 21st. So we might see a bill. We're hoping to see language this week, and we may see it passed by Thursday. If not, hopefully by the following Thursday, because then we're done for the year. And if that happens, then it's likely that it will be kicked to the new Congress. So, and I can talk about more what's in it, but I'll pass it on for now.
Well, I think what's in it are those details are essentially what's going to sort of affect Vermont, affect our program, and a lot of the way we do business. Status quo may or may not change with the passage of the hemp or the passage of the Farm Bill, removing hemp from the Controlled Substances Act. They've expanded the definition as well of hemp. So what they're removing from the Controlled Substances Act, the previous definition just said hemp. These are some of the details, and correct me if you've heard otherwise, Erica, because these are the pieces that we've been paying attention to. But they also included in the definition of hemp seeds, which has always been there, but it says and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers, whether growing or not, with a delta 9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% in a dry weight basis. So they've added basically the CBD compounds to the definition of hemp, and those would be exempt from the Controlled Substances Act. So this, maybe we should wait till the Farm Bill passes, but this this
It's all very conditional. This is all okay. We're all.
No, this is a definition in the current version that as far as I've seen, but it essentially.
Do you want to go into the schedules? So it would take it out. So right now it takes it off of all the schedules for the Controlled Substance Act. So it completely removes it from the schedules. So this is where I've been getting a little bit confused, is because I've heard talk of having it be going into Schedule 5. And so some of you may remember, like in September, the FDA approved CBD for, and this is not applicable to all hemp, but CBD as an approved pharmaceutical for 0.1%. So my thoughts are that we may end up seeing almost like a fight between whether this is going to be considered a pharmaceutical or it's going to be considered a food supplement. And we can talk about that more later. But right now, I think we're still unsure if it's going to be completely pulled out of the CSA. Either way, it's going to be regulated by the FDA. That's definite.
Hemp as a whole, or just CBD production? Because I think that's a lot of the questions that keep coming up, really, how hemp for fiber, hemp for grain, or hemp for, the extraction of cannabidiols or other compounds, would they all be treated the same, even if they are removed as a Schedule 1 drug? And I don't think that's clear at this time.
I don't think so. I don't think it's clear. Yeah.
So as far as the Vermont program goes, we're still, basically building a plane while it's flying here. Some of the things will have rules for folks to review in a few weeks, maybe by the first of the year. The authority that was given the agency by the legislature last year to write rules for hemp, those will be out for public comment around the first of the year. Back to the delisting of hemp. Basically, once that Farm Bill passes, hemp growers in the state will have access to banking that they didn't have before, crop insurance that they didn't necessarily have before. Everybody didn't. Some actually did. And FSA loans. So those are the huge components of the Farm Bill, is access to banking. What it does to the pilot program, the language in there about the pilot program, it gives the states a year to develop a plan, a state plan to replace the pilot program. It's got record-keeping requirements, testing procedure requirements, procedures for disposal of products that don't comply, enforcement components, and annual random inspections. So not everybody that's registered will be inspected on a given year, but we'll have to have the authority and the ability to go in and spot check. So what'll happen over the next year after the Farm Bill passes, we'll try as best we can and make our rules, hemp rules, comply with what would be considered a federal industrial hemp program. And hopefully the year after that, it'll be accepted by USDA, and we'll be moving forward with our own Vermont program. Currently in Vermont rule, we have the ability to use genetics to classify something as hemp. We haven't done it yet. I don't know if we'll still be able to do that based on the new federal rule. They're holding pretty hard on that 0.3. But talking with other states who currently have compliant pilot programs, some states are using 1, some states are using 0.4 as the theoretical testing limit. Some are using solid 0.3, some are using 0.39. So there is no consistent way that testing is being done across the states. The other piece of the Farm Bill, it's a nod to states' authority. They're also basically want to give the states the primary enforcement authority once you meet this, once your plan's accepted. Do you want to add to that either?
Yeah, it just says
Yeah.
that the states will regulate.
Yeah.
That's what it says, the states
Yeah.
will regulate. Yeah.
Well, I think for many farmers, this has been so difficult to access seed, which
Yeah.
that'll change. Essentially hemp will become just like any other crop, a little bit different because there's gonna be different regulations, but as far as, if somebody's growing corn or somebody's growing hemp, the access to seed hopefully will change for people. It won't be hopefully illegal to get seed from other states, or it won't be so difficult to import seed in from other countries, pieces like that. There should be a more, just should be more doable by farmers where it hasn't been at this time. It's been very difficult for people to access any kind of plant material without, federal permits for the most part. So I think that'll be great. And then I know a lot of farmers have run into federal programming barriers themselves. So NRCS, if people are familiar with the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, there are many farms that participate in those programs to help with conservation practices, and farms that are growing hemp can't be involved with NRCS programs at this time. And some farms, have had some issues with that are enrolled in growing hemp. And same with FSA, which you already mentioned, the Farm Service Agency. And just barriers with the National Organic Program too. Being certified organic has been a huge barrier to farms growing hemp. They just, we haven't been able to do that, and that will really, we'll be able to overcome a lot of those federal programming barriers once, hemp is delisted, or whatever's going to happen with it. It's going to become a crop. Not a burden,
Right.
as people see it now.
Do
So
you guys
somebody
have,
has a
since
question.
you touched the third rail on organic, so
Yeah.
do you know if this is part of the process that there is in concert a USDA definition being developed as part of this Farm Bill kind of rollout, or that would come in the future?
I think they would have to, it seems so simple to say the Farm Bill's gonna pass, and then all of a sudden everything's gonna be, it's just gonna be like normal, like every other crop we grow. But I think in this particular situation, that won't necessarily be true. Just like when we saw the hemp bill in 2014, it seemed like every party should have been talking to each other, but clearly, one government organization wasn't talking to another one, and I'm sure it'll be the same, once this Farm Bill passes. It's gonna take some time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether it's put into Schedule 5 or delisted altogether, that would remove hemp and CBD from 280E, correct? Completely? legally, no questions about it.
That's the proposal, yes, yeah. And so what I have questions about, and we can wait till it actually goes through, that definition pulls out hemp-derived THC from that definition as well. So you would essentially have unscheduled THC
As long as it's
derived from
under
hemp.
0.3%.
Yeah,
As long as the dry matter had less than.
correct, as long as the dry matter had, so if you've got those big extracting facilities going on where they are separating the different cannabinoids, my question then becomes, regulatorily, is that THC still a controlled substance?
That's a question.
Yes.
Just hire an attorney.
I mean,
Asset.
Right.
CBD is technically, and will continue to be technically, I think that if it comes from a plant that does have higher THC and you're just extracting out the components, it is considered illegal if it comes from a plant. So it's really, sort of on the flip side,
Right.
it's really all about the initial plant.
The problem
But,
is, when it's been extracted, you can't tell whether it came from hemp or high test.
Correct.
True. Yeah, that's gonna be another thing to have to deal with. A lot of gray area will continue, I'm sure.
Do you guys know if there's any testing components? Is there a testing methodology? I know the state's working on kind of a testing program. Is this something that's part of the Farm Bill that would be superseded in a year or two, or?
So so the Farm Bill instructs a state to move beyond the pilot program into a state plan, and testing is one of the criteria to an improved state plan. So that's one of the critical elements that they've outlined that we'd have to deal with.
Are they gonna give everybody and say, hey, Vermont, Alaska, Nebraska, here's how you guys test? Go, trim 3 samples 30 days before, or certify seed, or?
So I don't know the answer to that. There was NASDA, the National Association of State Department of Agriculture, white paper that everybody used the gas chromatography method. Did you have something to say, Heather? I just interrupted there.
Are you talking about a state-owned lab for that testing,
So,
or a state-accredited lab?
so the legislation that passed, enacted in July, gave us the authority to do either. The agency is putting forward a fee bill that increases some of the fees associated with growing hemp, and also for processors as well. And the thought is those fees would help create the Cannabis Quality Control Program. So somebody to certify laboratories. And in my head at the moment, it would be similar to the program that the health department uses for certifying drinking water labs. So if you've got a drinking water lab, they can test drinking water, and that result is an official state result, whether or not the certified drinking water lab did it or the state lab did it. And we're hoping to move towards that type of scenario.
I was just gonna add before that, generally, the federal laws are everything that we have to follow, and some states will choose to be more strict and others will choose to just follow the federal law.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how the federal law changes the process that we have in place now.
Yeah.
I think that's probably something that we'll be seeing, because it
Yeah.
likely will become more
Yes.
strict instead of less, I would imagine, at this point.
And you're going to have USDA doing a lot of it, but then you'll also have FDA involved.
Right.
So that will, for at least some of the products.
So watch, it's exciting to know that
Yeah.
this is in the Farm Bill, but it also does have, there's a lot in front of us yet to be dealing with and thinking about, that hasn't, obviously been figured out yet. So time will tell whether this becomes even more complicated, which generally is how things go with the government, right? Unfortunately.
Do you have a timeline for state level, 2019 hemp applications yet?
A timeline, sure. They're sitting on my desk. We're trying to make them electronic, so it'll be an electronic submission. And as soon as the folks in IT, our internal IT, build the form, it'll go live.
Okay.
But until then, if you need to, you can use the old form.
No, it's even available anymore.
Yeah, it
Okay.
says not, doesn't it say not accepting?
Yeah, not accepting
Applications.
applications. I just got a lot of clients who are very anxious to get that.
All right.
We got some photocopies.
Yeah. So we have been getting old forms and processing it for next year, but then we'll,
Are you accepting those?
yeah,
It's still $25?
yeah.
Heather, can I wanted to follow up with like two kind of specific ones
Yeah.
for you. With, federal status changing grants being available, what are grants that conventional farmers who grow hemp will now be able to get? And what are grants that people who have not farmed but are growing hemp and may want to scale up or get more involved, people who don't know farming, what programs should they be looking at that they could now be part of?
Well, so, I mean, most federal grant programs are generally restricted to, sort of like university institutions or nonprofits, so they're not directly available to farmers themselves. But the conservation programs through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, that's one of the primary programs that farmers tap into for assistance to overcome, various natural resource concerns. And so like the High Tunnel program is one of those grant programs that actually there was one instance anyway that a farmer applied, got the High Tunnel, filled it up with hemp, and NRCS was not very happy about that. And other farms that have been turned down when they said that they were going to grow hemp in it. So that will change. They'll be able to apply for those programs to have access to set up irrigation, different practices like that, that basically help with conservation concerns. So they address natural resource concerns. Then there's small business grant programs that farmers apply for or businesses apply for that are through the federal government. Those will open up partnerships with the university. Right now we haven't been able, even though the USDA says that they fund hemp grants, they haven't. So this will open up opportunities to have actual public research on hemp, which right now all the research is either funded directly through states or private foundations or funders or businesses. So there's a lot to learn, a lot people want to know, and we're 100 years behind or so in the research.
Yeah, so just to add on to the grant possibility, Heather's correct. There's not a ton of direct resources grants to farmers, but there's a few, like SARE is one. So most of these are all USDA. SARE's research, so it's on-farm research, but if farmers wanted to sort of experiment around and growers wanted to do something, it might be something about you've done SARE, it's like, it could be anything from...
It's the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, SARE, and they have a farmer grants program. It used to be up to $15,000, but I think they raised the cap recently.
Small.
So, so they're not huge grants, even though it does seem like a lot of money when you say it.
But
most people would be happy with that.
NRCS is a great option for farmers as well, and it's usually a match. And that's direct money. There's also, on the processing side, there's value-added producer grants. Those are actually quite big, like $250,000. And it's sort of an economic impact that you have to have, like creating a couple new jobs or whatever. So I think that might be a really good opportunity. There's lots of marketing money, so like a lot of local food promotion, marketing money. I think there's actually a ton of opportunity to get grant money into Vermont. And there's also a lot of USDA rural development money, and obviously hemp is going to be incredible for our rural communities. So I think we can really bring in a lot of money, additional money that way. Especially in the Northeast Kingdom, they get extra money because it's a REAP zone. So if anybody's NEK, you have like lots of opportunity, especially through the Rural Development Program, to get money up there.
It'll be interesting, again, to see how the federal government rolls out all of this, even within grant programs, what kind of requirements they'll have for people researching hemp. I just kind of keep wondering. So I think there's still so many details. So, I'm hopeful, but I also know the realities that people should know as well, just that it could become more restrictive, actually, for the state. But I think the good thing is that the government's supporting it too, so that's really positive.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will open up some doors for people to be able to work with government programs and have banking and crop insurance and other types of insurances too, where you couldn't even be insured before. I know some people hadn't been able to access liability insurance, but just overall protection and safety of your farm and your crop and yourselves.
Yeah.
This will help with hopefully a lot of those problems that people had been coming and not knowing where to turn, from that perspective. We hear about that a lot, people getting things stolen and not feeling safe growing hemp, and I think, hopefully this will help maybe overcome some of that.
We have a lot of funders calling us a lot, asking us about the legality, and there are a lot of funders that are more like banks, Vita, for example, really wanting to fund this stuff, and they're just waiting for this farm bill to pass. So I think it's going to kind of open some floodgates there.
Yeah.
For opportunity.
The banks are excited. The agricultural bankers are excited to diversify their portfolio, as they put it. And I think, like Erica said, they have felt the risk, and they've been trying to overcome that before the farm bill. But I think they'll be breathing a sigh of relief and be excited to get going on projects for people too. So it's a good opportunity for.
Do you guys get my question? I guess was for follow up, maybe for Eric and all you guys, because you're all following this nationally. It seems like a lot of people are concerned about the biggest impact this being competition, and being this sense that now there will be 1 million acres grown in Nebraska, and the price, particularly of CBD, is going to plummet. Do you guys get the sense that obviously these institutions want to get involved, but that we're going to see states that have not been involved turn the light switch and open up the floodgates? Do you think this is going to speed up the pace of production, or do you think that plants in the ground is going to lag behind? How open are these floodgates going to get?
I have my thoughts, but I think we should all answer that.
Yeah, maybe we should all answer
You go
independently,
first,
and then
Heather.
we'll.
I think it'll be slow for the floodgates to open, actually. In some places things might speed up, but there's a lot of pieces still missing before farmers can open the floodgates. We have, many years of crop support for other commodities that are grown in this country, and that's where people's, their experiences, everything they have revolves around certain crops, and I just don't see that changing that rapidly. And plus, just the handling, the processing, the marketing, all the pieces that if a farmer's, if these farmers are going to start putting in thousands of acres, you got to have some place to put this crop. CBD is maybe a different story, but when I think about fiber, grain, it's just markets have to be built, and farmers just aren't going to jump ship that fast from what they're currently doing, although some might. But so I think it'll be a little bit slow. I don't think it's going to take off just quite that fast. But I could be wrong.
So I agree with Heather completely that your traditional farmers that are sitting on a tractor doing large acreage, that they're going to have access to the seed and fiber markets. So the infrastructure for the seed and fiber market will develop. Folks growing for CBD, it's more of a horticultural plant. It's less tractor, more hand trimming, more walk in the fields and scouting. It's grown a little different than most of the traditional farmers in Vermont are used to. But you could see basically the floodgates open, if you will, like you asked, in the other markets. Vermont's got a pretty high CBD infrastructure in place. We've got one commercial entity that's pressing seed oil and really no fiber infrastructure, which the seed and fiber fit better with some of the land that we're seeing move out of corn. So if there are floodgates, I think the folks that are in the industry now, that's not going to change. We're not going to see a whole lot. I mean, our applications, what, 4 or 5 times what they were last year. So the floodgate is already here. It's already open. But this farm bill, I think it's going to. What we're going to see is those businesses that are already starting to be able to grow. Access to capital, access to banking is big. I don't think it's going to be overnight, but right now there are workarounds in process, and if the banks don't have to prove that they're not laundering money, I think there are banks on board ready to go.
Yeah,
ready.
absolutely.
So I agree. I think that the botanical side is just already totally cruising though, and is going to just explode even more. And I think that the other side, the more the commodity hemp in a field side, is going to go really slowly. And you know, from our perspective, from Senator Sanders' office perspective, we really want to see this be an opportunity for rural development, which I think all of this is, for rural economic development. It's all positive. But we also really want to see an opportunity for farmers that are in the state and own land and are completely struggling because the dairy industry is really in a terrible spot. And we really just do want to see those opportunities. And I think that is going to take a lot of intentional focus, and it's going to take researchers and scientists like Heather and farmers that are going to share practices, and it may, it's going to take a lot. I feel like that's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take us finding markets for these things, whereas on the other side of botanicals, it's just like such a different thing. So I think that a lot of the infrastructure can, and the testing and things we can use across all of those types of products, but it's like we have hempcrete, and like there's just so much work that we have to do to develop all of these other uses for hemp. So I think it's gonna go. Some of it's gonna go really fast and some slow.
I'll keep going. And I know you guys are super busy, so we won't take up the entire afternoon here. I did want to follow up. You mentioned the hempcrete part, and even just politically, markets have to be made. But in states where politically cannabis is seen very disfavorably, is industrial hemp something that they've more embraced, or is Oklahoma still going to be probably take a little bit longer than like Minnesota to get on board just because of the politics, or do people see industrial hemp as all being good? Is that fight already over? Does the Farm Bill kind of end that political question in these states?
Does the
Some of
state
some of these
still
don't.
have to approve hemp once the Farm Bill is approved?
They have to
Yes.
have a program where they
They
regulate it.
have to have a program.
They have
Okay.
to
So if a
be-
state chooses not to have a program, then they're still out of the game.
I guess so. I
So
don't know how that would work.
an individual can grow in that state if the state doesn't have a program, but they have to meet the federal standard somehow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But that state authority might not like them growing hemp and could make that harder for them, and then
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
we wouldn't have the support,
right.
which would be a big disadvantage. And clearly, we have the support in Vermont, and so.
But that's even to the floodgate question, where still ahead of the curve because none of these other states who haven't regulated before,
Yeah.
they still need to build their own regulatory capacity even before they figure out a combine or processors or anything like that.
Yeah.
And we also have the Vermont brand, which I know you're aware of. That's a very, very beneficial thing.
Yeah, so what it says in the Farm Bill, proposed Farm Bill, the last version I saw, which may or may not change, it says states may seek approval of a plan that will replace the pilot program enabled under the plan. And it says if a plan is not approved, producers can operate under a national plan. So we don't have a national plan yet, but I imagine it'll. This is
So it'll
in
be
the coming
faster
year.
maybe
Yeah.
for states that have a
Yeah.
state plan already to just sort of keep moving ahead. That's
Yeah.
kind of what it sounds like.
And I'm hoping our hemp rules meet all this criteria,
Yeah,
so.
already, so we
yeah.
can just, that'll be
Continue,
exciting.
yeah.
Do you guys know anything about felony conviction restrictions with this yet?
Yeah, we were just talking about that. So that was, so there was the Hemp Farming Act, both in the House and the Senate, and the Senate is the one, that's the one that made it in. The House one didn't make it into their version, the Senate one made it in, so they're in this conference, and the assumption is they're just going to adopt that as is. And I think it was towards the end of the process that McConnell did put the felony restriction into the Hemp Farming Act. So you can decide to take away in a conference, like you can take away elements of things, but you can't add in. So we're kind of expecting to maybe see that in there still, so it's restricted on anybody that's had a felony, which is not a good, we don't support that at all.
Any kind of felony, or a.
I think it's a drug felony, but don't quote me on that. I
The
should,
language
yeah.
that I saw was related in some way to trafficking.
Right.
illegal.
Yeah, so not any felony, right? So we don't know, but it's definitely something we'll watch as soon as we see the language, hopefully this week.
Gary, I have this question for you. You were talking about certifying hemp seeds, hemp genetics. Is that something you anticipate including in the Vermont pilot program?
So the pilot program will be going away. It actually doesn't exist anymore because the Farm Bill expired. But it'll be part of the program.
That you're going forward with.
Yeah, so the evolution will roll out rules publicly, probably the first of the year.
Okay.
We'll hopefully have those rules in place before the start of the next growing season. And then we'll start really concentrating on certifying laboratories, like I described before. And then after that would,
After we get accepted, like.
yeah, we would, and this is something Heather's wanted since we started, seed certification would, that's a,
As a breeder, that's.
correct.
I think it's something that it would put us above a lot of the other states
Yeah.
where if we would have that. That's like
Mhm.
my whole model, setting Vermont up as a model of excellence for this industry.
So we need other people's talent to sort of
Heather can't
even
do it right.
describe what that would look like.
Right.
So I mean,
I don't.
yeah.
Which good time to mention that there is a UVM, there is a fundraising campaign going on actively through the University of Vermont supporting the industrial hemp program. So throw that, if you want to
Yeah.
expedite that research,
We've
there
been
is a
trying,
way.
yeah, and for a couple of years, actually, we've applied for state funds to build a seed certification program for hemp. No, we've been turned down. It wasn't your phone, was it, Cary? Twice, but, I mean, it's been on our, something that we've really wanted to do to basically, enable farmers within the state to have access to high-quality seed, and also, from a legality standpoint with the Farm Bill, we wouldn't have to worry about importing it from other countries or other states, that it would be here and would meet the requirements. But one of the things that we had to put into place to get buy-in from, companies or individuals was an official, seed certification program that meets the, international and national standards for seed certification. That's really important for especially larger companies, people that are afraid of basically getting their genetics stolen. And I fully support the people that have spent a lifetime, a career, whatever it might be, to develop strains and varieties, not wanting those to just make their way anywhere.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of reasons to do it. So we've really
Around that, and it is something that I think this industry needs, new industry needs. So the only seeds we still certify in Vermont are our seed potatoes.
Yeah. Not even seeds.
Right,
Yeah.
seed potatoes.
Right.
But we have willing supporters for sure, and other countries and states that have been willing to train, basically train staff to do field inspections and so on and so forth. So it's all kind of right there waiting whenever we have the resources to put it into place. That's the limiting factor. 'Cause you gotta have people, well-trained people, and
Yeah.
lab services, and we have. It's not just about writing it into law. Then we have to be able to have the resources and well-trained individuals to be able to put it into place.
And that's why Oregon is so far ahead
Yeah.
of Vermont in this, because they grow most of the
Yeah.
nation's grass seed. They grow all the clover seed, so they had a fleet of seed certification specialists already.
And, and
yeah.
they were obviously very willing to have us come out,
Mhm.
train our, train staff or whoever would be in charge of doing inspections and whatnot here. So again, I think it's resources more so than lack of interest or inability.
The laws are already on the books
Yeah.
too.
As I say, we can model that.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
we're
not.
already in Vermont law.
We already have a seed certification program in law, but just as far as being specific about hemp. And there are international, hemp certification standards that we would need to follow, at least to meet the needs of some of the companies that are in Canada or Italy or wherever that would be allowing us to grow up their seed to be able to distribute within Vermont. And it's another opportunity for other farmers and individuals to have different businesses involved with hemp. So, and I just want to say, New York is not doing this yet. So come on.
Let's do it.
I hear one more time, I'm going to talk to Cornell. Sorry, I was just complaining about that to my Cornell.
So I'm curious from Cary, about what do you think, could there be some potential for state funding for this? Obviously, you have some staff allocation, so there's some money from the state going to the Agency of Agriculture for this, but I don't know, I'm thinking working lands, or
Yeah.
are there other opportunities?
That's where we applied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The time might
Mhm.
be different now.
Yeah.
That was a few years ago.
So that is basically the only state
Yeah,
funding
it's the only
mechanism right
one.
now is a working lands grant. And there are two different types of grants. There's infrastructure grants and then farm viability grants. I would personally, I'd sit on the working lands board. You can look online and see who all the board of the working lands program is. And I would encourage folks to call those folks up. And just to have a conversation, see if that's something they'd be willing to support. What I would like to see the working lands grant support that on the infrastructure side is more processing for fiber or the seed oil. So there is an avenue for that, and we would see more acreage in the industrial hemp.
Last, we have maybe one or two more.
I just had a quick question about the seed certification. Would that certification program, would that lead to seeds that would be less likely to grow a hot crop? Or would it grow or be somehow protected? Well, I use certified seed, so it's not my fault. Or would a grower maybe be relieved with some testing requirements if they use certified seed?
All of that, yes. But and some of it, like in the current rules, I envision less testing requirements for certified seed. I don't actually remember all the questions in a row, but,
Oh, testing. Would it relieve the testing?
so what I would like to see proposed or accepted is the different types of cannabis. Your type 1, the high THC, type 2 is your 50-50. Any 3 and 4 are high CBD or other cannabinoids. The 3 and 4, you can, if we could get a genetic test that said genetically this certified seed is hemp, then your testing's done until it reaches a retail market.
Right.
That's a current concept, current vision. I don't know if the public will accept that.
Yeah.
It's certainly the way that we're proposing to move forward. I don't know what impact the Farm Bill will have on that. The Farm Bill may want us to be checking for that 0.3 at every transaction point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you think, like, from an agricultural standpoint or from a scientific standpoint, you're confident in the seed doesn't need, that the crop doesn't need to be tested if you use a certified seed?
Correct. So some of the varieties we're seeing right now, the cherry wine, for instance, is testing the same this year as it was last year, and it's been spot on. I know there's some growing conditions can influence that, but they seem to be consistent. So if you've got a good breeder, the seeds are consistent. If you've got somebody who's saving seeds here in Vermont, it could be potentially all over the map. It's not a certified seed. It's this and that, and it's back cross. So we've seen both. Some expensive certified seed stayed consistent to its cannabinoid profile, and some seeds that were cross-pollinated with other hemp varieties grown locally that have not remained type 3 plants. Yeah.
So how would you address that issue when you're trying to convince someone they should take a risk on hemp as a farmer? And they say, I can grow all this hemp, but then what am I gonna do with it? It's cross-pollinated.
You mean if it gets, yeah.
0.03% THC when it's tested, that you can't use
So,
it.
yeah, well, so right now you have, and right now maybe that would be a good context. Right now, if your plant does test hot, you have 3 options, right? Or right now, there's not a criminal penalty for a hot test, but you do have to do specific things.
Yeah. So if it's above 0.3 but below 1%, you can have it processed at one of the medical dispensaries in the state. There's 5 that really flesh out to being 3. So you have 3 options to process that, and the reason being is they're licensed by the state to handle THC. So they could either process it and isolate the CBD and charge you a fee for processing, or you could, it doesn't describe the relationship that you have to enter into with the dispensary, but that beats the other option, which is crop destruct.
But that would only be for the flower, that wouldn't be for the fiber.
Correct.
Generally, the fiber is harvested before, I mean, it should be harvested before seed production if it's for a higher end fiber market for rope or clothing. You know, it's harvested about when the males start to shed pollen. So you're actually harvesting before there's really any seed production. If it's just a fiber market, for a dual purpose market, you know, the fiber likely wouldn't be the issue that you would have. It would be with the grain. I will say that we're growing varieties together. I mean, I know that there certainly is a chance that they do intermingle, but we haven't actually. It's surprising how close some of these things can be and not really interacted that much together. And if you're talking about an entire field of hemp, not an acre of plants, generally if you're growing for grain, you're not growing an acre. you're growing 10, 15, 20, 25, 50, you know, so the dilution effect is pretty strong. You wouldn't see an entire field contaminated. That would be pretty unlikely.
When a larger field plot, if done for seed, cast more pollen since it is a pollinated plant.
Hemp produces a lot of pollen. There's plant breeders here that can speak to that better than I can, an immense amount of pollen. And it is, you know, it does travel by wind. Most of the pollen falls directly around the plants themselves, but I mean, I think people have shown that they can, you know, find pollen probably hundreds of miles, 300 miles away or something. So, I mean, yes, it does move, and it can be a problem. But I think on a bigger scale, I don't think it would be a huge problem. But again,
And assuming there's probably nothing in the Farm Bill that's going to differentiate where people grow seed versus grow for flower. That's all going to be up to
right.
whatever
It's
you and
gonna
your
be up
neighbors
to the
do.
state. And I think, you know, other states like Oregon, of course, that have, you know, strong seed production infrastructure, they have pretty simple mechanisms in place, you know, pinning maps and such that, you know, when people are growing beet seed for sugar beet seed versus table beets, you know, there's someone here that could speak to that, where farmers go out and, you know, you basically have to map where you're growing things. I don't know how exactly it works, you know, if it's first come, first served, there's some kind of hierarchy, but I mean, it's dealt with in other places pretty effectively.
Mhm.
And so I think setting up a seed industry, we'd have to do the same thing here. And we'd have to look to someone, you know, to another state to help us set that up, but it's not impossible. And we actually have a lot going for us here with trees and hills and, you know, we don't have, you know, like hundreds of acres of open land. I mean, we have a lot of barriers here that are also helpful. I don't know.
You want to take the last one, sir?
I think that's
talked a lot about it.
great. So regarding the 0.3% threshold, that is simply for Delta non-THC, correct? Not THCA?
No, it's not. So originally, I could pull up some slides. So originally, the method that we're all supposed to be using is a GC gas chromatograph method that derivatizes the sample first. So the method that we're all supposed to be using to test for 0.3 is a method that converts all the THCA to THC prior to analysis. So what we've done is use the total theoretical THC instead. So the THCA times 0.877 plus THC, that package needs to be below 0.3.
So even the theoretical THC that hasn't yet been converted to THCA?
Correct.
That's frustrating.
But if not, I mean, if it, so I'm looking at Joe here, but even your whatever sour diesel picked right off the vine, or picked right out of that, isn't going to have above 0.3% THC. It's all going to be in THCA. So your traditional high THC cannabis is going to be defined as hemp if we were to hold to that definition.
Which was a nice loophole while it lasted, maybe for some people. But the yeah. Let's do last one here.
Something regarding Vermont registration. So $25 was last year. There's wording in it that said there's going to be differentiation between cultivators, nurseries, extractors, or production. If we were to put in forms, is that going to be additional forms, additional fees? Is there farm bill fines or like fees that might be associated that then Vermont would have to come back?
Yeah, there's no farm bill fees, but we're proposing a fee structure, and that'll go through the legislative process outside the rules process. And what we're proposing is a tiered structure. So the bottom, bottom tier, if the farm bill passes and it's no longer a controlled substance and we no longer need the pilot project, people growing for their own home use wouldn't have to pay a fee. So Eli's 6 plants here in Winooski wouldn't need to be registered. So it would be your commercial folks that would pay a registration fee. The bottom tier would still be 25, but would go up from there. And I think, I forget what we're proposing, it's not phenomenal. 50 acres, it's 50 acres and above. I think it's a $250 fee is what we're proposing. There would be a fee for the labs and a fee for processors as well. But that will all be, that'll go through the legislative process in our fee bill. And you'll have an opportunity to say that's too high or that's too low. And we did look at, like, Oregon's a $3,000 fee, Kentucky's is $1,300. So we wanted to keep this farmer friendly, but still be able to run a program.
Yeah, I think it's 50 an acre in Maine too, even, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to, before I thank you guys again officially, I want to, Heather, you guys have an event coming up in February,
Yes.
right? For all those hempsters?
The Vermont Agency of Agriculture and UVM Extension are putting together, hopefully we'll finalize the agenda next week. That's my goal. For February 8th, it's a hemp conference down on the waterfront here at the Hilton. Just that way or that way, I think. And it's grower focused. So the primary audience will be for growers.
Sweet.
And it'll have some fiber, grain, and CBD application as well, so.
Because you can't all wait for Hemp Fest just for next year. There's a lot more coming. Thank you guys, our audience at home. We got a lot of people commenting on this, and we'll share this with you guys after
Any
too. But
questions on there you want to answer?
there's one question about the felony distinction, and apparently there's a farm viability meeting later this week, which Keith chimed in on. So if you guys are interested, you can check that out. But want to thank you guys for joining. Thank our water sponsors today, Vermont Cannabis Solution, for keeping us hydrated. But thank you very much, Erica, Cary, and Heather, for joining us. I hope you guys appreciate it. Like I said, if you like this, share. It's on the Heady Vermont Facebook page. And tell everybody again, another chance in February, and stay tuned in the meantime.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Yeah.